Good morning and welcome to the WellMed Charitable Foundation Caregiver Teleconnection Program. My name is Minerva Villarreal and I'm going to be your facilitator for today. Today's presentation is The Pride of Caring, Mental Health and Caregiving, a Matter of Importance for the LGBTQ Adults, with Dr. Elliot Montgomery Sklar and Lucy Barylak. Now let me tell you a little bit about our presenters. Lucy Barylak received her master's degree in social work from McGill University and has dedicated her career to support caregivers. Lucy was the founder and long-standing manager of the Caregiver Support Center, a multi-service respite program for family caregivers. In 2003 and 2012, she received the Queen's Jubilee Award, presented by the Canadian Home Care Association, awarded to the basis on her dedication in developing a national coalition to support the issues and challenges facing informal caregivers. She has published numerous articles and has presented at major conferences on her researching findings. Lucy is also a liaison supervisor at the School of Social Work at McGill University. Now, Dr. Elliot Montgomery Sklar is a public health professional with 2 decades of experience in supporting the health of the public through academic work, research, and service. He has led healthy aging programs for seniors and for caregivers in Canada, Florida, and virtually. Dr. Sklar is a professor of health sciences at Nova Southeastern University in Florida. He publishes and presents his work internationally, focused on the complexity of issues related to aging and caregiving. And with that, take it away.
Thank you so much, Minerva. Welcome, everybody. Today is a very important program for the LGBT caregivers. And from our own experience, we also have many service providers who will join us for the annual Pride of Caring programs. We're going to talk today about mental health and caregiving as it relates to the LGBT. I'm going to use that acronym because the other ones are extremely long, so I hope nobody is offended by that. And we want to invite you to ask questions and to share your experiences. This is a safe place where we hope we can provide you with an environment to talk openly about, and you'll have an opportunity to ask questions. We know that mental health, even just mental stamina, is something that impacts caregivers at times in many ways along the caregiving journey. There are some underlying issues and concerns as it's related to caregiving in any community that faces disparities or is part of a majority community group, and there are many. We want to emphasize that across the board. But today, since June is Pride Month, our focus is on one community in particular.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. As Lucy said, we're going to use the acronym LGBTQ plus or LGBT because there are very long other acronyms, and I will quickly just acknowledge that. It also depends on where you live. I was interested and saw actually that the acronyms used in certain states are not the same as in others. For example, one acronym yesterday shared with me was 2SLGBTQIA+. So that's a mouthful for anyone to say in a 1-hour presentation. And what that acronym meant, 2SL, means two-spirited. So in some communities, it's seen that people who are part of the LGBT community are what are known as two-spirited, meaning that they have both the masculine and the feminine energies within them. And then, of course, we have lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer or questioning, intersex, ally, and plus, meaning that it's even further inclusive. So as we discuss this community, we lump it under one umbrella, But as Lucy said, we want to make clear that we're looking at our experiences, at what the research and literature tells us, and the experience of one individual may certainly not be the same as another. Another factor here is that age can really change our experiences as community members. And what I mean by this is that older community members who are part of the LGBTQ plus community have different life experiences and traumas than younger adults. So, LGBTQ plus adults do more commonly experience mental health concerns across the board, more so than their non-LGBTQ plus peers. Now, the stress of caregiving and isolation that caregivers can experience can sometimes make these concerns worse. We're also living in a seemingly less tolerant environment when it comes to diversity. That includes gender diversity and sexual identity. And that alone adds stress to our everyday lives. Now, while our focus today is on mental health and caregiving, we certainly could not have this discussion without acknowledging that our mental health can be challenged by many circumstances that go beyond brain chemistry. So, strain in our environments and also in our caregiving roles can make our mental health feel more vulnerable. And I think that saying that or acknowledging that alone is very powerful. I was curious if anyone has anything that they wanted to share about how they're feeling in our current environment, or anything that they wanted to share in response to the statement that strain in our environments and our caregiving roles can make our mental health feel more vulnerable.
Okay, everyone, you can either unmute yourself or go ahead and type it out in the chat, and we'll be more than happy to read it out. It helps us when you interact with this presentation because it gives us some idea of what you're thinking of what you've gone through.
And this is a safe space for sharing.
Definitely. Nothing at the moment, Elliot.
All right. Well, if anything else comes up, we welcome your input, certainly. So, as I mentioned, we look at a lot of research, and current research indicates that LGBTQ plus caregivers in the United States experience higher rates of mental health challenges as compared to their non-LGBTQ plus counterparts. Now, there's also limited research available about LGBTQ plus caregivers in general, and we're entering an environment where there will likely be even less research and data because we're capturing less data about diverse populations in things like the census, for example. So there are a lot of national health surveys that take place each year from which a lot of this data comes. Now, about 7.6 of American adults identified as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, or another non heterosexual orientation, according to a 2024 Gallup poll. Now, that seems to be up from about 5.6% 4 years ago. But my thinking on this is that it's very much still an underreporting because in all of this data, people are asked for identifying information like your name, your address, your birth date. So people might not feel comfortable disclosing something that's so personal in public data. And this is not a new trend. This is something that we have seen over time. So that doesn't help our cause because when we're not counted, we tend to be less visible and our needs are not recognized. Now, during our program this week and next week, we're going to focus on our experiences and the experiences of caregivers in the LGBTQ plus community that have shared with us over our many years of hosting our dedicated programs to honor and support LGBT plus caregivers whose journey in caregiving can be a bit different than their peers. And today we're going to talk about that along with the mental health challenges that can be stressors of caregiving and that can bring about unique communities of caregivers in terms of ways to cope. Now, as always, we'll leave you with resources too. We always do, they're very important. So, as we look at prevalence of LGBTQ plus caregivers, what's interesting, as I talked about being invisible, is that in actuality, there are a larger number of caregivers who are adults within the LGBTQ plus community than their peers. About 1 in 5 LGBTQ individuals serve as caregivers, as compared to about 1 in 6 among their non-LGBTQ plus peers. So we've been hosting our Pride of Caring series for about, I think it's 8 or 9 years now, and that statistic has remained unchanged. There are consistently more LGBTQ plus individuals who serve as caregivers, more so than their non-LGBTQ plus peers, and there are a few reasons behind this. We're less likely to have children, and as such, often become caregivers for parents over siblings who might otherwise have children, because it is perceived that the LGBTQ plus sibling or adult child may have more time or availability to participate in a caregiving role for an older parent. In addition, LGBTQ plus adults often have what are called families of choice, in which they provide care to a family member who may not be a blood relative. There is much more community based caregiving among LGBTQ adults and communities, with people caring for one another as they age. This is a great strength in our community that we'll explore actually during our program next week as we look at some of our experiences that are unique and positive for other caregiver groups to learn from. Now, LGBTQ plus people are also 1.2 times more likely to be primary caregivers and 3.5 times or 3.5 times more likely to provide care for chosen friends and family. So, a much greater percentage of LGBT caregivers are providing care for friends and chosen family than they are for blood relatives. Another trend that we're seeing across caregiving across the board, really, as our population is aging and the demands for more caregivers are there. There are about 3 million LGBTQ plus adults over the age 50 in the United States, a number that is projected to grow to 7 million by 2030. It's just a few years from now. But if anything, we seem to be removing diversity issues from our national health research and services, which reduces culturally competent care that is needed to support all types of diverse populations as they age.
Thank you, Elliot. You know, LGBTQ plus individuals play a significant role in caregiving within the United States, often facing unique challenges, especially when caring for aging loved one. As you said, the population is really aging. So let's look at some of the mental health challenges among the LGBTQ plus caregivers. There is definitely emotional stress. Around 78% of LGBTQ plus caregivers report feeling emotionally stressed, highlighting the intense emotional demands of caregiving that we know in general. Isolation and stigma. LGBTQ plus caregivers often experience isolation and stigma, both within their caregiving roles and in broader social contexts, which can negatively impact mental health. Depression and suicide ideation, LGBTQ plus seniors, who may also be caregivers, face higher rates of depression and suicidal thoughts compared to their non-LGBTQ counterparts. You know, the available data and the experience of LGBT caregivers underscores the need for targeted support system and resources to address the unique challenges faced by these caregivers, particularly as they navigate the complexity of caring for an aging family member or a chosen family. Now, research indicates that LGBTQ caregivers in the United States experience higher rate of mental health challenges compared to their non-LGBTQ counterparts. And these rates are even higher among minority communities within the LGBT community. So, for example, Black or Hispanic LGBTQ caregivers may have even more challenges and or may access resources even less. So here are some research studies that I want to share with you. A 2018 study analyzed data from the National Alliance for Caregiving found that LGBTQ caregivers reported significantly higher levels of poor health and emotional stress than non-LGBT caregivers. So that kind of goes along with what Elliot was telling us. Similarly, a 2019 study using data from the Behavior Risk Factor Surveillance System observed that lesbian, gay, and bisexuals, LGB caregivers, experience poor health outcomes, including increased rates of their or poor health, poor physical health, healthy days, and poor mental health days that were not as good as the average person compared to heterosexual non-caregivers. According to 2018 study, LBGT caregivers reported poorer health outcomes, including greater emotional stress compared to non-LGBT caregivers. So let's take a look at what is contributing these factors. Why is this happening? So several factors contribute to the elevated mental health challenges faced by the LGBTQ caregivers. So one of them is definitely demographic differences. LGBT caregivers are typically younger, more racially and ethnicity diverse, less likely to be married, and more likely to have lower socioeconomic status than non-LGBT caregivers. These this situation factor can definitely influence caregivers' experience and associated stress levels. So then there could also be financial strain. LGBTQ caregivers report higher levels of financial strain, with 52% indicating financial stress compared to 38% of non-LGBT caregivers. Financial concerns can increase emotional and mental health challenges. Now, this is an important one, social isolation and discrimination. LGBTQ caregivers often face social isolation and discrimination within the healthcare setting, leading to reduced access to support and resources, which can negatively impact their mental health. These findings highlight the unique challenges faced by LGBT caregivers, underscoring the needs for tailor-made support and resources to address their specific mental health needs. So LGBT caregivers often face mental health challenges that can differ from those experienced by their non-LGBTQ peers. Caregiving in general can be stressful, we know that, but LGBTQ caregivers experience additional layer of stress due to factors such as social stigma, discrimination, and lack of tailored support.
All of those ring true. And as you were speaking, I was thinking about isolation and discrimination. And sometimes it's not as obvious as we think it is. I was speaking with an older gentleman about the notion of placement. And this is an older gay gentleman. And he said that if he had to go into a long-term care facility, he would rather die. And I asked why he had felt that way. I was a little taken back by his comment. And in his view, being in a long term care facility, he would feel isolated as a gay person, not with his community. And he feels that he would need to potentially go back into the closet or hide a part of himself. And when you think about long-term care facilities, we don't think of them as a sexual environments of any kind. But it is very important when we think of it with a greater level of sensitivity, how they can be isolating environments for people who come from any type of a minority community background. For example, if it's a predominantly white populated facility, the person is not white, they may not feel as welcome. So the same holds true as we look at LGBTQ plus adults in their aging process and the facilities that are available to them. So before we go on, I did want to ask if anyone participating had any thoughts or anything that they wanted to share with us.
Okay, everyone, you can go ahead and unmute yourself or raise your hand, or you can also type it out in the chat box, and we'll be more than happy to read that out loud as well.
Thank you. And again, we welcome anyone's input. Learning from your experiences, your thoughts, is certainly helpful, not just for us, but for other participants as well. All right, well, I will keep going. And if anything comes up, like I said, we're an open forum here and a safe space. Now, I did want to talk a little bit more about some issues that you brought up, Lucy, specifically with regards to discrimination in healthcare settings, not just long-term care and housing, as I spoke of. But LGBTQ plus caregivers often face discrimination in healthcare settings, which can make them feel isolated when trying to find care or resources for loved ones. Even if they don't face overt discrimination, they may anticipate this experience because of past trauma, which is very important to consider. So, for example, if you have experienced previous trauma in a healthcare setting, you may be less likely to want to have a member of your chosen family who may be non related to you to come with you to a medical appointment because you may fear being perceived in a certain way, or you may feel like you don't want to disclose something personal that may be important to your health care. So these are things that are very important to think about. There is often a lack of understanding from health professionals and also from caregiver support networks, which can increase stress and reduce the mental and emotional resources that we need to be able to care for others. So, as an example, many married LGBTQ plus couples do not share the same last name. That can trigger some questions from hospital staff about the nature of relationships, and we hear about that quite often. Another example is that most caregiver support groups and even advertising for caregiver programs in mainstream healthcare settings and advertisements don't focus very much upon LGBTQ plus adults. And we've heard that from many caregivers that participate in groups where they feel like they're the only LGBTQ plus identifying person. Now, that can make the feeling of isolation even worse. Also, healthcare is often tied to a religious entity. Think about the hospitals in your local community. For example, my closest hospital is called Holy Cross. Some members of our community have had negative experiences with religion and can feel very sensitive to discrimination that religion can bring about. So, if you have a hospital named Holy Cross, that may not be where you would want to go, but that doesn't speak to the level of sensitivity that that facility or their staff may be providing. So, a lot of this is based upon our experiences and our perceptions. I'll share personally that I was a little taken aback when I went to a urology appointment at Holy Cross Hospital with my husband for kidney stones. And next to the sign in sheet for appointments was an open Bible. Now, it made me feel unsure of what our healthcare experience would be like. And this is a very recent experience. Research from the Center for American Progress indicates that LGBTQ plus individuals experience higher levels of discrimination in healthcare, which leads to lower quality care and also worsened mental health outcomes. And that is because of a few reasons. There's a lack of tailored resources and support. Like I was saying, There are very few caregiver groups that advertise specifically to LGBTQ adults, just as an example. And there are a lack of specifically tailored resources to support the mental health needs of the LGBTQ plus adults and caregivers based upon their own experiences and traumas, like I was saying. So, a study from the AARP actually highlighted that LGBTQ plus caregivers are more likely to report that they need mental health resources that are both inclusive and sensitive to their needs. There are a lot of organizations nationally that are working to advance this. The front runner is called SAGE, Services and Advocacy for Gay Elders, and they are working to bridge this gap by providing these resources and advocacy for LGBTQ plus seniors and caregivers. And we'll provide their resources at the end of our program today as well. Now, I'd mentioned earlier about the limited research and information that we have, but I do want to spotlight a very important AARP report that came out in the fall of 2024, which is really some of the newest and best information that we have. And the report was called Dignity 2024, The Experiences of LGBTQ plus Older Adults, and it includes the information of about 2,200 LGBTQ plus adults ages 45 and older who were polled in April of last year. So the report found that 4 out of 5 LGBTQ plus adults, 78%, are concerned about having enough social support as they get older. Women and Black respondents, along with those who have a disability, were more likely to say that they are extremely or very concerned about a lack of social support in the future. The survey also found that half of LGBTQ plus older adults already feel socially isolated at times, which can have a profound impact on a person's mental and physical health, according to this research. Now, the feelings are highest among transgender and non binary adults, with 63% reporting that they often or sometimes feel isolated from others. And we know certainly how isolation and depression are linked. Many older LGBTQ plus adults are feeling some post traumatic stress right now in our political environment and our social environment, with concerns about rights, even the ability to feel safe at pride events, or to be open about one's sexuality without repercussion or prejudice, especially in healthcare settings. Not feeling able to be open about oneself, including one's sexuality or relationships or caregiving responsibilities, can be very isolating. And our community is so very, very diverse, which is amazing. We have communities and sub communities within them and fringe communities among us, but there are not many LGBTQ plus caregiver groups or communities across the board. I know personally and work with many LGBTQ plus caregivers who feel very isolated because of their own life experiences, challenges around coming out with parents, or having to care for parents who may not have been supportive of their being gay, or feeling the brunt of caregiving responsibility, for example, over a sibling who may not have children. And so the notion is then that the LGBTQ plus child will shoulder more of the caregiving responsibility because they have more time. Now, I'll share the situation of a caregiver that I know personally living here in South Florida, where I'm located, and she's providing care for her mother who has dementia. And this really immediately followed providing care for her father for several years, who had advanced Alzheimer's ahead of his passing last year. So it's been back to back caregiving and stress. And this caregiver is in her 60s, works full time, has her own health issues to deal with. I think that this is relatable for many caregivers, irrespective of gender or sexuality. But the kicker here is that I can't even imagine the emotional toll that this experience is taking on her, given that her mother kicked her out of the house when she came out as a lesbian. And now her mother is having to move in with her until a Medicaid bed becomes available for the long term. She is single, she is on one income, and it is very challenging for her to access respite care. So she feels very isolated in her situation. Now, undoubtedly, stressor upon stressor takes a toll. And I'm curious from anyone participating today what your thoughts or experiences might be, and if you can relate to the story of the caregiver that I've just shared.
Okay, everybody, if you would like to participate, please go ahead and unmute yourselves, and I'll be more than happy to call on you. You can also type out your comments or questions in the chat box, and we will get to them during our question and answer section.
And you don't have to be a member of the LGBTQ plus community necessarily to join in the conversation. So welcome, Billy Jack. I see your hand up.
Yes, go ahead, Billy.
Hi, my name is Billy Jack. I'm a caregiver, LGBTQ caregiver for my mother, and I just identified with the feeling of isolation. We live in a small rural community in um, central-ish Wisconsin, and um, not a lot of LGBTQ people here. And then I do go to like the Department of Aging. They have a caregiver wellness support group once a month. And I have found some comfort there just being around other caregivers, but I definitely am the only LGBTQ caregiver. So yeah, I just wanted to say I identify with that isolation feeling, and definitely, deal with some of the depression and anxiety issues that come along with caregiving. And yeah, I just fit into the statistics you were giving. So I just wanted to share that.
I really appreciate your sharing your candor and also the role that you play in supporting your mom's health and well being. So I want to acknowledge you and thank you for that.
Thank you, Billy Jack. I mean, it's so appropriate what you just said because what I'm going to be talking about right now is isolation, very much what Elliot was saying, and its impact on mental health, including the link with depression. Isolation has a profound impact on caregivers of older adults, no matter who you are, particularly those who are providing long-term care. The effect of isolation can be physical, emotional, and mental, and they can significantly worsen the well-being of caregivers. So let's look at some factors that increase emotional stress and burnout. And one of them for sure is loneliness. Caregivers who feel isolated, either physically or emotionally, can experience profound loneliness. This sense of disconnection can lead to emotional exhaustion and stress, which may result in caregiving burnout. Now, the other thing is also there's a feeling of helplessness. Caregivers may also feel overwhelmed when they lack social connections. The absence of emotional support can lead to a sense of helplessness, especially when managing the challenges of caregiving alone. There can be physical consequences. So let's look at those. For example, neglecting self-care. Caregivers often neglect their own health and well-being when isolated. With fewer social interactions or support systems, caregivers may forget to take a break, take care of their own medical needs, or even eat properly, leading to physical health issues, not having an opportunity to even exercise or go for a walk. So obviously there is increased stress. The physical effects of chronic stress due to isolation can weaken the immune system. And, even the existing conditions that you have could be worsened, like hypertension or heart disease. Long-term care isolation can contribute to a decline in the caregiver's physical health. So all the things that I'm saying is just to make you aware of and be conscious about the fact that you need to take care of yourself. So given that social isolation is linked to reduced longevity, increased risk of, it even increases risk of dementia and other health issues, it is a real important issue to keep in mind. And remember, Elliot and I always say there's two people in this relationship. One doesn't outweigh the other. You need to take care of yourself. On a personal level, I was a caregiver for my mother, and I had to learn that lesson for myself that I did need to take care of myself as well. So, here are some ways in which you can reach out to help along with available resources. And as we say, you don't need to do this alone. So, even though there's a lot of literature that tells us that there are lack of resources, um, thankfully to Elliot, who does a lot of that research to find all these amazing resources for you in the community. I'm going to talk a little bit about them. Now, don't worry about trying to write them down or anything. If you're registered with us, you will be receiving our slides and it'll all be there. But let's just talk about it informally. And Minerva at the end will also tell you, if you haven't registered, what you need to do. So there are online support groups and communities, which we're happy to say much more than when we first started out. So things are a bit improving. So caregiver support groups, many organizations offer online support groups where LGBTQ caregivers can connect with others who share similar experiences. These spaces are crucial for reducing feelings of isolation, as Billy Jack was talking about, and fostering a sense of community. Now, one of them, and Elliot did mention, is SAGE. They provide services and advocacy. They offer resources and support for LGBTQ caregivers and older adults. They have online communities, peer support, and local chapters across the US for both emotional and practical support. So it's a good idea to really connect with them. Now, LGBTQ caregivers form, there's online forums such as those hosted by Facebook groups or Reddit. Did I say it right, Elliot? Provide informal spaces where LGBTQ caregivers can share experience and advice. It's so important to, yes, all support groups, no matter who you care for, are very helpful. But in this particular situation, it's really more helpful to be able to connect with other people who are going through the same as you are. Now, you could consider, not everybody is into groups. There's therapy and counseling services. So mental health services tailored to LGBTQ caregivers. Now, seeking professional help is an important step for caregivers who feel isolated. So many individuals may feel more comfortable with therapists who specialize in LGBTQ issues. So here are some referrals that you could look into. So there's Psychology Today allows users to find therapists with expertise in LGBTQ issues. This can help caregivers find a professional who understands their unique challenges. The other one, there's another really good organization called National Queer and Trans Therapists of Color Network, offers resources to find culturally competent therapists for LGBTQ people of color. The other one, now we also keep in mind that there are community-based services and resources, LGBTQ-friendly caregiver agencies. Some caregiving agencies specialize in providing services to LGBT individuals and caregivers. These agencies may offer, now just keep that in mind, they can offer respite care, assistance with daily tasks, or emotional support, all tailored to the unique needs of LGBT people. Now, having said that, when I said you don't need to do this alone, there is help. So please, as I'm talking about, if something really stands out for you and you think, this is something that I would like to connect with, it's a really good idea. Now, the AARP's LGBT Caregiver Resources, want to tell you that AARP offers resources to help LGBT caregivers manage stress, find support, and access respite care. Their website has helpful articles and toolkits for LGBT caregivers. Now, Caregiving for LGBT Families by the National LGBT Task Force provides caregiving tools and resources that address both the mental health and the practical needs of LGBTQ caregivers. The other thing that is also very important to keep in mind is crisis hotlines. You know, something can happen in the middle of the night. So, for immediate emotional support, caregivers can reach out to LGBT crisis hotlines. These services provide confidential help for people experiencing mental health challenges, stress, or isolation. Now, the Trevor Project offers 24/7 crisis helpline for LGBTQ individuals in distress. While it primarily serves youth, it can also be a resource for LGBTQ caregivers. The other one I want to talk about is the LGBT National Help Center provides peer support and counseling over the phone, including for caregivers related stress, and it is for LGBT individuals and caregivers. So, as I said before, you do not need to do this alone. There are resources available. And I hope that we were able to sensitize you to the fact that being a caregiver in the LGBTQ community can be stressful and does add a lot more stress. So please take take a look at all these wonderful resources and see what can help you. But at this time, I am also curious if anyone participating has any other tools or strategies to support their mental health during stressful caregiving moments and experience, or any other resources to share. So before you think about it for a few minutes, I just want to share personally when I was a caregiver for my mother, and I felt very, very stressed out and recognized it. I gave myself permission to wallow in my sorrow for approximately 1 day. It has to be it has to be time limited. And while I was doing that, as others of you who have been on this with us for many years, I would just dance around my living room because I love to dance and listen to music and gave myself that extra time to just say, I feel sorry for me, but I'm going to be okay. So, with that, is there anybody that would like to share your tips on how do you manage your stress? Or if you have any other resources that we didn't mention, we would greatly appreciate it.
Okay, we have Linda in the chat. She put, in the state of New Jersey, there's a Department of Health law that all nursing homes and assisted living residents must have a policy and do a yearly education under this law. Senior bills of rights on LGBTQI plus for their staff members. And she did share a link for that.
Thank you for sharing that, Linda. That's excellent. And many states actually have similar laws. A few years ago, under President Biden, for Pride Month, he had made a declaration to better support aging among the LGBTQ plus community. And that included this type of law and bills being passed for long-term care facilities, as an example. So it'll be interesting to see how things unfold in the coming years. And my hope is that there will be more such trainings and sensitivity. Um, but I think the experience that Billy shared with us of feeling like the only member of a certain group in a caregiver support group, that in and of itself feels isolating when you're going to seek out support. So I really do hope that some of these resources that Lucy shared for online networks for support groups, even Facebook groups that are specific to caregivers among the LGBT community, will be helpful to some of us participating today. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Michelle. As I
Hi.
said earlier in the meeting, I'm from Madison, Wisconsin, and your sessions on caregiving that I have been joining since I'd say the beginning of the year have been so, so helpful. I don't know if it's okay. I do Al-Anon due to a previous situation in my life with my daughter about 15 years ago. Oops, sorry. I didn't turn my phone off. Okay. So I have continued that, but I knew with going to that, it didn't address what I needed as far as caregiving. And God knows my parents did not teach me any of that because well, my mom died unexpectedly, and then my dad was alcoholic, and he remarried, and his new wife pretty much took care of him. So I didn't have to, and being a veteran, it was all paid for. But having this as another tool and the ability to ask questions, and like I did early on, this is where I know I can turn to begin to start to look into things. Because I know I have to keep my mouth shut when a situation happens, because I can dig a deeper hole. But as was previously shared, I let it stew for about a day. Well, this is lingering into today, but I feel like I'm more equipped in gathering information and making my decisions on how I'm going to handle this. So I appreciate it very much. So I look forward to your continuing to have these for me. So thank you.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. I mean, you know, we talk about it when we say you don't have to do this alone. We truly mean it, Elliot and I. You know, I went through being a caregiver for my mom. Elliot has been a caregiver on and off in his life as well. And so the whole idea behind it is that, you know, we need to educate ourselves. Even though I was a professional and the healthcare system, I work with caregivers. When it happens to you, it's a totally different story. So many times I would feel as incompetent, even though I had a lot of the answers and knew the healthcare system very well. So again, and you know, it's just being able to be open, to talk about it, and to find the information that you need that will help you. So I truly hope that all these wonderful resources that Elliot put together are amazing when I see that, because if I look back where I am in Canada, in Montreal, we don't have as many resources as identified. And this is something that needs to be worked on as individuals, and we need to advocate for the rights of the LGBTQ plus caregivers and individuals.
We need to advocate for everyone, including ourselves and those that we care for. And so, Michelle, I really want to thank you for sharing with us, for participating, and also for the role that you provide in supporting the health and well-being of those around you. It sounds like you do that for more than just one person. So as we wrap up today, I'm going to share some additional resources that I promised Michelle that I would ahead of our start of today's session. But I want to close on a very positive note, because when we focus upon mental health issues, sometimes that can come with a negative perspective or outlook. But really the point of our program today is to bring awareness. And also to identify supports to improve our health and our well-being. Because as we know, the role of caregiving can be stressful, and that can take a toll. So I want to emphasize that despite all of the challenges that our community faces, and more mental health challenges, we have a lot of grit, and grit is really important. LGBTQ plus caregivers, and I think caregivers as a whole, show resilience. Some rely on chosen family or communities for support, while others advocate for greater visibility and inclusivity in caregiving spaces. And next week, we're really going to focus upon this notion of inclusive caregiving. And it's an important one that goes beyond any one community. So I really do hope that those of you participating or watching this program will join us. In larger LGBTQ plus communities, like where I live in Fort Lauderdale, there are mental health programs specifically designed for LGBTQ plus caregivers, aiming to provide a sense of belonging and community, which can alleviate the mental health pressures that caregivers face. So please check in your local community what might be available to you. And you can do that by calling 211 in any community, 211 from any phone, to ask about any specific resources. That could include your local area agency on aging and how to reach them, but that could also be to ask if there are any specific caregiver support services in your area. And these can help to enhance well-being and help you more effectively navigate the demands of caregiving. Now, as we said, the challenges that LGBTQ plus caregivers emphasize the need for more targeted support, mental health and community support that cater to the specific needs of individuals and the people that they're caring for. So here we have a lot of wonderful resources that I wanted to share, and one of them, Lucy, you might not even be aware of, but right now Canada has a free mental health hotline that exists throughout Canada. It has been expanded to now provide service to the United States as some of our mental health hotlines are being defunded. So I want to, and I've highlighted it here, emphasize we normally tell people that you can call, um, a crisis hotline in the United States. I don't know that that's available now. So in case, you can call 1-877-330-6366 to access Canada's free mental health hotline. So thank you to Canada for that, in case you cannot reach our 988 mental health crisis hotline here in the US. As I mentioned, 211 is a great resource for local community information. There's also the National Caregiver Support Line, which is supported by the Alzheimer's Association. There's the National Family Caregiver Support Program, and I'm going through it very quickly because I know we're running out of time. But these are a lot of different hotlines and helplines that will be coming to you in a copy of today's presentation with our resources. And anytime you see anything underlined, that is a hyperlink you can click on to get more information as well. So I'm going to leave this up while Minerva shares some last information about upcoming programs. And again, we really hope that you'll join us for our next program next week as we look at inclusive caregiving and building upon strengths. And I want to thank you all for participating today.
Thank you, Elliot, for that. You will notice there's going to be a poll that pops up in your screen. Please go ahead and fill that out. That is how we can see what your thoughts are on our presentation. If there's any topics you would like for us to do in the future and things like that. So please go ahead and fill that out. As far as our classes that are coming up, we have one coming up on June 9th on Nutrition for Successful Aging with Meriden Cerner. And then we also have our next Pride on June 11th. What we can all learn from the experience of LGBTQ caregivers for the new future of caregiving, of course, with Elliot and Lucy Barylak. And then on Tuesday, June 17th, we're going to have Importancia y Desafíos de una Planificación Anticipada de Cuidadores de Salud. That's going to be by Leslie Martinez, and that's going to be our Spanish session for the month. I am going to, oh my goodness, it stopped. Let me restart. Okay, I restarted the poll. I'm also going to put in the chat the email as well as the phone number for you. If you did not register ahead of time, please use that information in the chat box or what Elliot has posted on the slides as well, and I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. If you did not know, I am the one that does answer the phone so when you call. So please go ahead and reach out ahead of time. I want to go ahead and say I would like to thank Elliot and Lucy for this great presentation. I would also like to thank the Wilmette Charitable Foundation for sponsoring and providing these classes. If you would like to register for any upcoming sessions, go to our website, www.caregiverteleconnection.org. You will find our calendar, our upcoming sessions, and our previously recorded sections as well. If you have any trouble, give me a call at 866-390-6491, and I'll be more than happy to help you with that. And with that, Elliot and Lucy, do you have any final words for us today?
I just want to say take care of yourselves and be well. And thank you so much for joining us.
I echo what you said. Thank you for sharing with us all. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you to all of our participants, Linda, for the information that you shared, and we hope you'll join us next week.
All right, everybody. Bye-bye.
With that, I
Bye-bye.
want to say thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.